Congratulations to me, I have made it to my winter break and I have approximately 11 days to read and do bookish things with Clover along for the ride. So we do have some storms that are going to hit in that 11 days. So we will be battening down the hatches and staying inside. And so there should be some good reading time. As far as plans for this vlog, there are 3 books that I am in the process of reading that I would like to finish up. First up is Rebecca. I'm doing a very slow reread of Rebecca. I last read it probably 20 years ago and decided that I would reread it. I obviously remember the basic outline of the story, but I have really been trying to read it for imagery, themes, etc. And I only have about, I think like 20 pages left to go, so it's an easy one to knock off the list. But it definitely is living up to everything that I remembered from it. And although it may not be a 5-star, it's going to be really close to it. Next up, I would like to finish The Tenant. I read this for the Goodreads Awards to determine who I was going to vote for, and this is the first Freida McFadden I had ever picked up, and I did not finish it during that whole award prep cycle because I just knew it was not going to, I would not be voting for it. But I knew it was a soft DNF. Since it would really have to be a book that I felt that I was giving a 0 to for me to DNF something, I did want to go back to it and just wrap it up and get it done. So I have that on my plate to do, and I will give you my thoughts and feelings on it after I do that. And then finally, I have a thriller, All Eyes on Him. The screen changed already, so don't even look there. All Eyes on Him by Ileana Zander, which I owe a review on, and of course I'm always just forever running behind on that, so I do want to finish that up. I really feel like I'm going to cut back on the thrillers that I read in 2026. I am just not enjoying them, and I realized that I have almost a separate, completely separate rating scale for thrillers than I do for mysteries and other books that I read. So I feel like I'm giving a book, it's a 4 for a thriller. Like I already, in comparison to other things, wouldn't rate it as highly. So I did this last year with fantasy. I read fantasy in 2024 and just realized I was not enjoying it. So I cut out the majority of it, except for books that I had either said I was going to review or things that I'd already purchased. And that, I think, made my reading for 2025 go much more enjoyably. And now this year, I think the same thing for thrillers. I think I'm going to be cutting back on my consumption of them. So they will still pop up occasionally, again, if I've already purchased them or I've committed to doing a review of something. But other than that, I don't think I'm going to be going out and actively searching for new thrillers. Now that, that doesn't mean that if there's a book that everybody's talking about and I feel like I'm missing out and I have to read it, I won't do it, but that's not usually how I work. Hence why I've never read a Freida McFadden before. Anyway, so those are the 3 that I definitely feel like I'm very, very close to reading and will be easy to knock off in the next 11 days. I do have another book which has been dragging on for most of the year, and I keep soft DNFing it and putting it aside and then picking it up and reading a little bit more. And that is A Very Bad Thing by J.T. Ellison. I think I should just get rid of that one next. Not sure how much I have left, probably less than 100 pages. So I should try to do that. And then I think I haven't started yet, but I think a book I might start for this vlog is Mother-Daughter Murder Night by Nina Simon. So that may be the last book I read over the 11 days. So with that being said, I'm going to take you along and then we'll just be reading from there. Days later, and I have updates. So I've currently finished 3 books and I have many thoughts. The first thing I finished was All Eyes on Him, which again was for a review that I think late on. Must be, because I think it's published in December. So we are with our main character Natalie, and Natalie and her best friend, roommate, I think her name is Kara, went out to a club, and Kara set her sights on this rich guy that she saw in the club and was determined to not only hook up with him, but she told Natalie that he's like our gravy train. And so Natalie left the club. Kara was under the assumption she was going to go home with this guy, but the next day, Kara is found alive in a bus stop, but she has been drugged and she is basically in a coma. She is in a coma. She's non-responsive. And Natalie is devastated. However, she's trying to piece together who was this guy. And she does talk to the police, but she doesn't get a sense that they are going to look for the person that Kara was trying to hook up with. And so she's already trying to figure out what to do. And then, coincidence of all coincidences, like every other thriller these days, she is walking down a street in Manhattan. She's just had a less than successful job interview. She is unemployed. She doesn't know how she's going to make rent because Kara is in the hospital, and she basically saves a guy from being hit by a car. And this guy turns out to be the driver of the guy from the club. This guy from the club is a potential crypto billionaire, and when she saves him, he's so grateful. They are chatting and she's like, oh, you know, it's better than the rest of my day because I just had this bad job interview. He's like, oh, you need a job? She says yes. And he's like, well, we're having this big party because our company is about to go public and you can work for us for 3 days as a housekeeper in prep for this party. So not only does she save the life of the driver of the guy from the club, he offers her a job. And so she takes it upon herself to, she's going to figure it out. She's going to get to him. She's going to be his downfall. That is the setup. I will say that as much as all of that is unbelievable, everything that happens in this house for these 3 days is even more unbelievable. And there is a twist, but it is easy to see it coming. And I believe, if I'm accurate on my little bit of background research, that this was non-traditionally or self-published and has been picked up and is being published by Poison Pen traditionally. Kind of had some weird romance elements at the same time as well that weren't great. I ended up giving this a 2.3, and so I'm probably not, my review is probably not going to be what they're looking for. I haven't published it yet. This is one of those reasons why I've decided that I'm going to step back from thrillers in 2026, because this is just how I'm finding everything. I'm going to caveat that with, I'm going to read thrillers that I've already purchased off my shelf if I get to them, or if I'm in a book club and a thriller is chosen, I will probably read it. But I'm not going to be purchasing any new thrillers, so you will probably see some thriller reviews on here as I'm just getting through everything that I've got. But I'm not going to make this a big part of what I'm looking for in 2026, which is going to be refocusing on niching down into mysteries again. Next up was another thriller, and as a reminder, I was almost done with all of these books. That's why I have so many books completed, because these things were just like so close to the end, and I just wanted to get through them, and hopefully it helps boost my number. So I started reading A Very Bad Thing by J.T. Ellison in January of 2025, and it is now January of 2026, and I finally finished it. And this is another thriller. I was hoping that this would have some mystery elements of a whodunit. It does. So it's kind of walking that line between mystery thriller. It's a very thick book. It did not need to be this long. So we open up the book and we are following best-selling author Columbia Jones, who is on a book tour for her latest release. And she is the type of best-selling author that her stops on her tour are ticketed and in high demand. Her daughter, Darian, works for her, sort of her publicist, marketing person, etc. And she is there on tour with her, as well as Riley, who is a reporter. And Riley is writing a piece about Columbia for a magazine, which is owned by Riley's ex-boyfriend, millionaire ex-boyfriend. So yeah, a little bit of the unbelievable again in all of the setup. They're in Colorado. It is the last night of the tour. Riley is trying to wrap up her interview, and she doesn't really feel like she's gotten anything groundbreaking about Columbia's character. But then as they attend this final session, Columbia is taken aback and faints on stage when she sees a man in the crowd. And Riley hones in on this and thinks, ooh, maybe there's something I can follow this up, and she's got some deep, dark secrets. She goes to Columbia's room the next morning to try to do her last interview and finds Columbia has been murdered overnight. So we are set up for a whodunit and figuring out who killed Columbia, and it veers into thriller at this point, because we do meet the detective who's going to work on the case, and we are following it through his perspective. So this novel has Columbia's point of view, Darian's point of view, Riley's point of view, the detective's point of view. It also has pages from a manuscript interspersed at various points to take us into a dual timeline and to take us into the story of a murder that was committed about 30 years ago. So there's a lot going on here. And I know a lot of thrillers do multiple perspectives. A lot of thrillers do dual timeline. We've got it all here. And so we're jumping all over the place, not in a good way. This has also the point of view of another attendee at the book signing or the book event, and then it also has eventually the point of view of the man from the crowd. So we're just getting little bits and pieces of everything here. I think that there isn't really a thriller twist until the very end. And even that twist was very, very easy to guess, for me at least. It's extremely too long. We get a lot of the same thing over and over and over again. And I ended up giving this a 2.2. Again, just even more fuel for the fire of why I'm moving away from thrillers this year. And my next finish is another thriller. This is my first Freida McFadden, The Tenant, that I read. I started reading this for my Goodreads Choice Awards vote video, and I did not finish it at that point because I was trying to get through 5 other books, and I knew I would not be voting for this one after the first 100 pages, but I thought I will get back to it. Maybe it's going to have something amazing and stupendous happen in it. It did not. I will say, if this is indicative of McFadden's writing, her twists are good twists. She does have a knack for a good twist. However, the writing is just not good. And so I don't want to read a bunch of bad writing to get to a good twist. It's just not worth it for me. Now, our main character is Blake, and Blake is a VP in a marketing firm. However, everything that is described about Blake's job sounds like advertising and not marketing. So Blake has this high-powered job. He's just bought a brownstone. He's engaged to a woman named Krista, and they are very much in love. However, at every opportunity, Blake is eyeballing women in a creepy, very icky way and thinking about what he would like to do to them. And it's gross. He's gross. Very quickly he loses his job. He is accused of selling his work to a competing firm, and his boss fires him without even giving him the opportunity to defend himself. And so he immediately goes into panic mode. He doesn't have a job. He can only get a job as a temp. Krista works at a dry cleaner's, so she can't make their house payment on her own. They are not making the house payment with what he's earning as a temp. And so they very quickly come to the decision that they have to take in a tenant, hence the name, The Tenant. And that goes very, very poorly almost from the beginning. So 3/4 of the way through the book, we're just getting Blake's perspective on poor pitiful him and all the bad things that are happening to him, and yet he's so creepy, and it's just not, we're hearing it all from his perspective, and he's just not a person who I feel sorry for and who I want to hear about all his problems, because they do seem like he's doing a lot of this to cause a lot of this to come onto himself. And we get to the first twist 3/4 of the way through the book. So it's not the end, but it's very late in the game. Up until that point, it's just a lot of nothing. It's, yes, the scenarios of why he's got a bad relationship with a tenant and the things that keep happening, but it did not need to go on for that long. It could have been something that was sort of boom, 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 boom. We just had a lot of exposition about the things that are going on, and it just drug. The writing was not very good. There was no character development. I mean, we know Blake is a creepy guy, but there's no character development of Krista, of the tenant Whitney, and I just kept thinking to myself, why am I reading this? Why am I reading this? Why am I reading this? Even the twist, although it was a good twist, and it was like, okay, that's a good twist, I have to give her credit for that, it was not enough to redeem it for me. However, ironically, I did give this, of the 3 that I finished, I give this a 2.6, so it does have the highest ranking of the 3, but it's still in that mid-2 range. And it just has cemented the fact that she's not going to be an author that I'm going to pick up and read moving forward. Now, complete opposite, I am almost done with Writers and Liars by Carol Goodman, which I'm finding to be amazing. Now, there are a few things in this that could have been handled a little bit differently. It's not a perfect book, but it is an interesting closed circle type mystery where we are trying to figure out who is doing this, and we are wondering if in this and then there were none situation, everybody is going to die. It's a very short book. It's only 250 pages. It takes place on an isolated Greek island in a mansion owned by a wealthy Greek guy who is the victim, and we know that from the synopsis, so that is not a spoiler. And then others on the island begin turning up as well. And so who has done this? Why have they done this? Is anybody going to make it out alive? Everybody is together. They have history. They all attended a writer's retreat there on the island together 15 years ago. And they've all been invited back by this wealthy Greek guy. And they all have a bone to pick with him, but some to, is any of it worthwhile or at the level of him deserving to die? No. It's just, he's not a great guy. Our main character, Maya, works in a museum on a college campus, and the love interest character, his father writes mysteries set in ancient Greece, and they have this common educational background in the classics. So there's a lot of mythology and just the classics references that I think may turn the average reader off and maybe too much. I do appreciate the way that Goodman handles it. She doesn't go into these long drawn out discussions of it or descriptions of the myths and things like that. She's pretty succinct and she gets to the point pretty quickly. I enjoy Greek mythology, and so for me it's almost little nice reminders of things that I haven't thought about for a long time, or I'm not as familiar with, or maybe I was familiar with at one time and I'm not currently. So in 256 pages, she's getting a lot done. The pace of this is very good. This is what I would say I thought we were going to get in A Very Bad Thing, which is a whodunit with a thrillerish twist. It is very reminiscent of And Then There Were None. And I personally have about 100 pages to go and can't wait to see, I guess I only have 60 pages to go, and can't wait to see who done it and how they're going to get off this island. So really, really leaning, we're kind of in 4.5 territory right now, and we'll see where we go from here. That will probably be, I will come back after I finish Writers and Liars to give my final rating for that. I will say I have started Mother-Daughter Murder Night, and this will be my first true mystery. I think that I can categorize this as a mystery for 2026, and I am enjoying the setup so far. It's something that I think we see a lot of in mysteries right now, which is this age range. We have 3 female characters. One is a teenager, one is her mother, one is her grandmother. So we have the 3 women, the 3 different age ranges coming together. That is very reminiscent of the Marlowe Murder Club, which I've just been reading. And there's a little bit of that in the Vera Wong, the different ages coming together with Vera to solve a crime. So I do think that there's quite a bit of that going on out there right now in the mystery writing world. And I don't mind it. I quite like it. I like the different perspectives and the different way that you get the insights into what the characters are thinking of things or how they work through issues, etc., and the different knowledge that they bring to solving the crime. So far I'm really enjoying it. I am only 20 pages into it. So we'll see where this one goes. Again, probably will not finish that one in this vlog, move it into the next one. But that is it for my update, and I will come back one more time when I do have Writers and Liars complete. All right, I'm going to wrap up this vlog because I finished the last 2 books that I wanted to finish. First up, I did finish my very slow reread of Rebecca. And do you have to say that it has been so long since I originally read Rebecca. It must be close to 30 years because I believe, well, I know I read it before Ariana was born. Therefore, yeah, it's got to be 30 years. And so there were so many things that I did not remember about it. I remembered the story and the plot, what happens, but I think with years, I'm viewing the relationships in the book so differently than I did when I was so much younger reading it for the first time. And really getting a different perspective with life experiences of what is happening in the relationships between our main character and Max in the book. And also just how much foreshadowing there is in that book that I think you don't pick up on the first time, even if you know the basic story and what is going to happen in the plot and what happened to Rebecca, etc. So I really enjoyed it, and I ended up giving it 4.5 stars, which is probably consistent where it was the first time I read it. I don't think I was rating books when I read it the first time, but looking back at it, if I was asked over the years what I rated it, I would have said a 4.5 stars, and so that's where it ended up. And final book of the vlog, I finished Writers and Liars. And I don't think I ever gave a plot summary for this, so really briefly, our main character, Maya, 15 years ago attended a writer's retreat on a Greek isle that was owned by this very wealthy man. She fell in love with Ian, and she became best friends over the course of the summer that this writer's retreat happened within, of Annika, who is also a writer. They're at a writing retreat, obviously. And now 15 years later, all of the original attendees of this writer's retreat are invited back to the island. Now, noticeably, one of them is missing. Their host, Argos, is also missing on the night that they all arrive. And he sets them a challenge. He wants them all to go to their rooms the first night and come up with the plot of a mystery novel involving everyone on the island and who is going to be the victim, etc. They all go off to do this, and then the next morning they are led to a different part of the island to basically be judged as far as who has the best story idea. And when they get there, they find Argos's body, and he's been murdered. And then what proceeds unfolds very much like a closed circle. They're isolated on this island. They don't have any way to get off. There's no boat that is docked there for them to get off of this island. And it's very much set up like traditional, and then there were none from Christie. Are they all going to be picked off one by one, or is this just an isolated thing and they're going to figure out who killed Argos? There's also some backstory. Maya's parents were friends of Argos, and Ian's father was also a friend of Argos. They all went to school together. And it does feel throughout the book that this backstory of the parents is going to play a part in what is currently happening. But there are other additional players like Annika and other writers who are there who don't seem to have this backstory. So what, is it just them, Maya and Ian, or is it everybody? Like, what is the involvement? What's going on here? I would say that this is plotted very much like a mystery, the majority of the book, but then it sort of takes a left turn into thrillerish territory, treasure hunter, that, you know, they are on a Greek island. There are hints all throughout the story that there may be antiquities underneath the house. There's some kind of hidden labyrinth. Maya's father was the curator of a museum. She has carried on since his death, and she is working as the curator of the museum as she is no longer writing. So there's this tie to that, the antiquities world as well. I will say that Maya and Ian, the majority of their relationship is about them understanding the allusions that each of them are making, because they can't have a conversation without a reference to a myth or, you know, a Greek philosopher or something or other. It's just their very nature. They're the kind of people that I went to grad school with, that you would go to lunch with them and you would just think, it's so tedious and so boring to sit and watch this person have a conversation, because all they want to do is litter their lunchtime conversation with quotes. I mean, great, I know we're all in grad school and you're trying to impress, but do you have to do it at lunch? And that's a little bit of what it felt like with Maya and Ian. And I think there's even a comment, if I'm remembering correctly, where Annika is like, sitting in a room with you two is like not understanding the language that you're talking, because they do this so frequently. It's just a constant theme with them. So it gets a little tiring, but like I said, I do know people like this, so I know that people actually act this way. It doesn't make it any more enjoyable, but people do act that way. I did end up giving it 4 stars. I wish that it had stayed more in line with a traditional mystery instead of feeling like it had to go into thrillerish territory. It wasn't sort of bridged the gap between the two, and I never think that that's a great idea. Like, stick to the murder mystery and figure out who done it. Why did we have to go on this thrillerish adventure? And I think that when it did venture into thrillerish territory, it was predictable thriller territory. And so therefore, if there's nothing new or groundbreaking and you're just using some thriller tropes to advance the story, that could be problematic. Also, it's a very short book, and so for it to be relying on such typical tropes of a stereotype just seemed like not really well developed. I did think that Maya was a well-developed character. I wish there had been more character development for Annika and Ian, who were the 2 characters we spent the most time with. There's a little bit for Ian. We have the backstory about his dad and him worrying that he doesn't want to follow in his dad's footsteps and write this more cozy-ish type of mystery. But he doesn't know what he wants to do or what his passion is. And I think Annika is originally painted as almost influencer-esque. She's got a very large social following. And there's also reference to, she keeps writing the same book over and over. Like every book she's written is basically the same book with just different characters and different plot. But then isn't it a different book? I don't know. So a little bit more character development would have been good there. And I do think the bad guy was also very, you know, twist your mustache, bad guy kind of a thing. So a little bit more development there. there were a few unanswered questions in my mind still about how and why that didn't get wrapped up as well. But otherwise, it was a quick romp. It was enjoyable, and it was a good way to start the new year. So that is it for this vlog. Thank you for joining me for my first, rolling over into the first reading vlog of 2026. I appreciate you being here. Tell your pets I said hi, and I'll see you next time.